Hi horse friends, thank you so much for joining Dexter and I for our first bath of the season. And I can't even tell you guys how much I was looking forward to this. His mane just felt awful, his hair felt grimy, but this guy has a tendency to get a really thick coat, so I don't like to bathe him until it gets fairly warm. And he also has a procedure coming up next week where he's going to have a squamous cell carcinoma removed from his wee-wee. This is something that we do every year with him, so it's pretty standard for us, but follow us because I believe, are going to get to film the whole surgery, which is going to be pretty interesting for you guys. So as you can see here, I'm really focusing on scrubbing the leg that he got casted in the fence. I want to now get all of the extra debris up. I feel pretty fortunate that the scabs healed really well and he's now non-reactive on it. We also have decently warm water there. I was adjusting the temperature there as well and really trying to get a good rinse. I find a lot of times when people are bathing horses, they focus a lot on the shampooing, but they don't focus on getting the initial dirt off, really getting the water all the way down to the skin. And then when they're scrubbing, also really getting the soap all the way down. So you notice when I'm bathing him here, for the most part, I'm actually trying to keep the water away from his ears. So I'm pointing it back towards his tail. A lot of horses become super worried about the hosing off process because they get water in their ears. So when I was just bathing there, you can see I kind of stuck the hose inside of his sheath. I kind of find that's a good way to get an initial clean on there. But guys, please note, you do need to do more thorough cleanings with the vet. Shoving water up there isn't just going to do it. And if you look closely enough here, you'll see all of the muck and grime. So there I'm working on the tail, really trying to get between his legs and get everything super, super clean before I start with the process of putting the soap on. So here in Nevada, I especially like to start with a medicated shampoo. If you look at that brown stuff that's all over him, that is aloedine. And I really like that shampoo, guys, because I feel that it really has a soothing property to the skin. So I like it for hives as well too. But you can see I'm really gonna get in there super deep with like a rubber scrubby brush to get all the way to the skin as well as I can. And then I'm gonna come later with some Orvis. But I'm gonna go head to tail on this, guys. All the way from his head, underneath his belly. I keep dropping that thing. That thing was like the bane of my existence while I was giving him a bath, but I kept using it because it's a great brush. And all the way under his belly, and I'm gonna get his legs, the top. A lot of times when I'm giving a horse a bath, you'll notice that there's more dirt on the top. I feel like that's where all the dust has a tendency to congregate because it doesn't just fall down to the ground. And if you look at Dexter's face there, you can see how much he was loving it. And it's really important that you focus on the legs as well. When you're giving a horse a bath, a lot of times a lot of guck and grime gets under the fetlocks, the front of the cannon bones, the hind end, and especially with these older geldings, they have a harder time spreading their legs while they pee, so their urine splashes up and gets a lot of that crud on the front of those hind cannon bones. The females, of course, have a tendency, or mares, to get it on the back as well, so I really do suggest that you guys focus there. And I'm really scrubbing those knees. Of course, we work hard on our horses on allowing them to touch us everywhere. And remember, guys, grooming is not just for looks, it's for their health. So if you have a horse that struggles with their legs, I do suggest that you really do take some time to work on it, because they can get scratches, they can get all these different things on their legs, and it is quite painful. when they get those. So I do suggest that you work on it when things are going well. I was a little bit frustrated there because the hole for the aloedine kept getting plugged up, but I got it going and then decided that I was going to put it in a big bucket and dilute it some now that I had a good concentration over what I felt like was this side of his body. So I have a tendency when I'm bathing a horse to work on one side and then go to the other so that I can quickly rinse it off if possible, on the left and then the right, and then I do a whole body rinse afterwards. Here I also like to use buckets for the tail as well, so I pre-rinse the tail earlier, but then I'm going to take this bucket and put his whole tail inside of it and really massage it all the way down to the tailbone. It's important to get your fingernails inside of there to really get the skin on the tail clean. Now, of course, don't stand directly behind your horse. If your horse is a kicker, Dexter is not. He's just the world's best pony as far as I'm concerned. So I did a double dip there because I really didn't think that I did a good job on getting it all the way to the tailbone. And then I'm going to take the rest of the water and scrub it all over the top. And yeah, you're going to see me get in there with my fingernails here. And he is just loving that. Look at his face. He's like, oh, Mom, I'm so dirty. Okay guys, so now I got my orifice out, now that I feel like I've got a good set on the medicated shampoo. And I like using the orifice as well as the medicated because the orifice really suds well. It is an industrial detergent, and it comes in like a paste, really. It's this big white container and it's like a big paste. But it really makes the horses white. It's a good bang for your buck. I've got about 15 horses myself, so I think it's a great product, and I just love the way it suds. I get in there deep, but it is drying, guys, so it's not something I like to use all of the time, but it is a great one for the beginning of the year, and you're going to see how white it makes him. I also like it for transporting in my trailer because it's not a liquid, and it comes in a big tub with a screw top, so I'm a lot less worried about the liquid falling over and spilling all over my trailer as well. I also find for my students, they're a lot less likely to use a lot of it, like the liquid. You know, they put it in their hand and use half the bottle, and we really don't need a whole lot of soap when you're bathing a horse because the residue, if you don't rinse the horse out well, can really cause them to itch and cause their skin to get dry. So kind of like I mentioned earlier, I really have a tendency to rinse, do one side and then rinse it. I don't want the suds to dry on the horse, so I try to move pretty quickly even when I'm scrubbing it so that I get one side done and then rinse it off, because to me the rinsing is almost one of the most important parts of the bathing process, because if you leave the suds on, it's just not good. Think about your own hair as well. So I'm going to start in the bottom, kind of work my way to the top, and I definitely like to work on one side and then move to the other if I can, so I know that I've done a thorough job. Oh, I'm sorry, Dexter, I didn't mean to get it in your ears. Sometimes Mom's a little clumsy. And you can just see all of that brown dirt pouring off of him. This boy is absolutely gorgeous when he is clean. So when I get to the top of the horse here, you'll see I put a lot of pressure on there because, like I talked about earlier, the dirt has a tendency to congregate up there, as well as the horse's soap. And I'm really focusing as well here on the sheath area as well as the legs, because that also is another spot that, like I said earlier, has a tendency to get funguses. And you see I'm going to actually scrape the front legs here. He kind of gets really long hairs behind his front legs during the wintertime, almost like feathers. And the tail can be definitely tricky as well, especially the tailbone area. So you'll see me really kind of try to spray that out, and then I'm going to analyze it and look closely at it and make sure all of the suds are out. You can see the bubbles if you look closely, if there is still soap in there. So if there is, I like to just keep going over it. And so what I noticed there was still stuff at the top. And then if I find soap at the top, well then of course it's going to drain down to the tail, and I'm going to have to do that again. And then now it's time to go to the other side. Oh, and look at Dexter. He has untied himself because he is so smart. Good boy, Dex. So if you notice this side, he's a little bit more reactive about the water. I believe that's because in the past, people have sprayed him in the ears when they are washing his mane. So I'm trying to be really kind and generous to him and making sure that I don't get water in his ears on the left-hand side like I did a tad bit on the right. But at the same time, he has an extremely thick mane, so I do need to make sure that the water gets all the way down there. And if you notice here, I'm really spending a lot of time looking at his sheath. I am looking at the area that he's going to have surgery on next week, actually, and making sure that that is nice and clean for the doctors. I know, yes, they would clean it and whatnot, but I'm trying to be respectful of them and their time and make sure that I'm coming in with a clean horse that doesn't have a disgusting looking sheath, and, you know, just be respectful of the vets. Okay guys, so now it's time to wash the mane, and you're gonna see I'm gonna get in there with a lot of that Orvis and really, really scrub inside of there. This mane has been driving me nuts. I couldn't brush through it, or I shouldn't say I wouldn't brush through it. So at our barn, I do not like to brush through manes and tails unless they are clean, because I feel that you pull out more of the mane without conditioner in there. So I'm really working this into the roots here, as you can see, and then I'm actually threading the whole mane through my fingers with the soap as I'm pulling it down. So I have mixed the aloedine into the Orvis in my hands on this side. You just can't see me doing it over there. I gotta grab both now. Never mind. And then I'm gonna take the rest of it and put it on his body and then mix them together so that I can shampoo them both at the same time and really get a good scrub on him. And now for Dexter's favorite part of the whole bath, standing and eating and drying, while I put conditioner in his tail and brush it. So if you notice, I have a nice mane and tail brush there made by Oster, and I'm starting on the bottom and I'm spraying it with mane and tail leave-in conditioner to hopefully get a lot of those knots out. And I do expect to lose a decent amount of hair with my first bath of the year. So if you notice, I'm starting on the bottom of the tail and I'm holding it higher up so that he doesn't feel the pulling as much on his tailbone. Once I get all the knots all the way through on the bottom, I will slowly work my way up the tail so that I know that I can get all the way through it, guys. It was absolutely so gratifying to get this done, and the tail and his mane just looked absolutely beautiful. If I put him in his stall right after I'm done bathing, he is generally pretty good about not rolling, but I didn't want to risk it, and we have this beautiful green grass here that I'm also trying to get him used to as well. So as the spring grass comes up, it does have a lot of sugar in it, so we like to let them out on it for about 20-30 minutes at a time. So I feel that I'm kind of doing two things at once right now. Plus it's a nice treat for him and a good reward after he stood so still for me after a nice long bath. And now guys, on to my favorite part, and that is working on Dexter's mane. I have sprayed it here with the mane and tail leave-in conditioner, and I am just gonna go to town on it. Normally I would start at the bottom and work your way to the top, but not in this case because it is just so dirty and so matted. My point by the end of this will be able to brush all the way through it. You guys might be able to hear my 2-year-old in the background as I'm narrating this. I'm sorry for that, but I think she's adorable. And this part, guys, is just so satisfying for me. And I also believe it feels really good for him. You can see he's actually not even lifting his head at all as I'm doing this, even though I was working close to his ears. And to me, that's just him giving me a big old thank you. So thank you guys so much for joining Dexter and I in his first bath of the year. I can't wait for you guys to watch the surgery next week on his squamous cell, and I'm so grateful for the veterinarian for letting us film it. So stay tuned for more.